Okay, welcome back. So we're still in the basic series, and now we're going to work with toned paper, but a dark tone, and working with a lighter pencil. So what I've got in front of you now is a demo I did some years ago, and it's a cityscape at 2 points, essentially a cityscape. But this is a quick illustration of the technique that we're going to be working with in this particular idea or lesson, and it's working on a dark piece of paper and working the light now additively or onto the picture plane. Before, we've been working mostly with wider picture planes or grounds, if you will, and then adding darker tone. And of course, we've worked on the toned paper in that green color, and now I want to work with a darker paper here, the black paper. I think that's interesting too, and it gives you kind of a haunting, kind of an intense, kind of contrasty value situation as well. So here's an example of that, and now let's move on to, since we're in the basics, we'll move on to a still life. And so I went ahead and put in, I'll put that to the side, I went ahead and put in a picture plane. Let me pull in a little closer at 9 inches by 12 inches. So my drawing will be 9 by 12, a little smaller, so we can get to it and see it. It won't take too terribly long. I don't want to make some of these videos a marathon, but sometimes I'm going to need a lot of time space to work on. So now the next step is the technique, is the materials and technique. I've got for this particular lesson, I'm going to use wax pencil, or commonly known as color pencil, and these are Prismacolors. You can see them there, and they're both white. It's the PC 938 pencil. They're just essentially the white, and I've already got them readied. I've already got them shaved down and exposed the lead pretty long here, and they're ready to go, good to go. Now, just pulling over here to the side a little bit, I'll pull over and I'll pull in a little bit so we can see. So let's experiment a little bit if you've never seen this technique before, right over and through here. So absolute dark now is the tone of the paper. So before it was absolute white, right? So this is absolute dark, and that's still, we'll still say that's 10 on our value scale. So as we move over here now, we can say that absolute light over here is going to take some time to build up. So you've got that tone of the paper, right? And we'll continue to build up a value system here that expresses what we want in terms of our full value range. So I'm getting closer there to absolute light. And of course, it's going to pick up a little bit of that texture of the paper. This particular paper is not Canson. It's probably a little bit cheaper, and it doesn't have quite the textural components to that. I've just had so much of this that I was given some years ago that a lot of demos I've done with the black toned paper I just kept, and I've got some extra, and I thought, okay, let's do one on black paper here. So that's getting close now to absolute light, and where I'm layering it. And notice I got there from layering it, I went from light to dark. So what we can say is then, if that's absolute dark, then I'm just going to make a very quick little sketchy value scale. And so that's 1, right, 2, 3, 4, 5 is about there, 6, 7, 8, and on over. And as we get down now to 10 and get to absolute light, so you get the idea. I keep on going here, I guess. Let me just kind of smooth on into it, I suppose. Get close to it, but you get the idea. So we're moving over, and maybe I'll go for one slight change right through here to the dark. That's a little bit better now. So you get this movement, right, to build it up. So again, we're going to work from light pressure. So I'm going to put light pressure, meaning that, let me get that R in there, light pressure. Okay, so we're going to build this drawing up in layers, number one, I think, for good aesthetics. Now you can break these rules later on, but in basics, in basics and intermediate especially, we want to keep that. So we're going to work in light, pressure, and layers. And now we're going to separate our drawing in two steps, okay? And then we're going to have a light side and a dark side, but we're going to render primarily, what's different from other drawings, we're going to render the light first. So light will be first. So keep that in mind. That's going to be a little bit different process. And quite frankly, it winds up having a little bit different kind of look to it, which I think is kind of haunting and interesting. I mean, what I mean by haunting, I mean that it has a nocturnal, a darker quality, because quite frankly, we're starting from an absolute, you could think of this as a dark room or a dark void instead of a white light void. So the way you started drawing in terms of its background tone can say a lot, I think, about the what am I trying to say? The overall feeling of what you're trying to express as well. I think that'll be interesting. Okay, so I'm going to pop up the image here on screen. And so we've got a little bit more complex arrangement. And so a couple things to look at. We're talking about composition. And by the way, I'll be doing some lessons, excuse me, more on composing. But just about everything we've done or we do in these lessons and at the drawing database has composition into it, but we'll slow it down and make a true lesson issue out of it as well. I think that's important too. So I'm going to be working again with the Prismacolor. These are wax pencils, right? So they're a little bit different than the chalk. They're not as dry, they're not as smudgy, and then probably just the kneaded eraser and maybe a white Staedtler and some hard edges too as well. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to lay in my composition here, looking for that back wall, and it's about halfway, maybe slightly higher. I'm going to lay that in nice and light, nice and loose, so we can have that come in, right? So we have that there, and then we've got several objects. Now, one thing I see I don't like, take a look at the composition. The rectangular box over here is at such an extreme eye level to us, and it's slightly 3-point, which I'm going to change. So it's angled in a little bit, so I'll do that over here. So the box actually over here is angled in a little bit. That's slightly saying it's 3-point perspective, which I'm going to change right now to 2-point, since the other forms are not so much, because we're getting a little parallax from the camera. So instead of this box angling, I'm talking about the left angle. I'm going to straighten it up here. Okay, so I'm going to straighten that back up. And then the other thing is, take a look at the very top of the box. You see the dark plane and you see the light plane. They don't change angle because we are at such an extreme at eye level. That's not a good thing for dimensionality. So we're going to change that. So if I brought the corner of the box down, like so, that's what I'm looking at. Now this plane changes a little bit here. It's slightly 2-point, and then it goes back nice and deep there. So that's a problem. So what I'm going to do is take this edge here, the top edge, and I'm going to angle it down further. If I angled it up, that means we'd be above it, and that's not really, that's a harder correction. So I'm going to make this change here, okay, of this box, and then I'm going to bring it down straight. So I'm going to make that change too. So we've got 2 changes to that box to make, and then I'm going to slightly alter this angle just a little bit to bring it down like so. And again, if I start to block it in a little bit, you see what I'm doing now. And it gives us, look at the difference between where it was before, just a little bit better view of the 3-dimensionality. So that's drawing not only what you see and correcting what you know to be a little bit awkward from when we take an image, etc. as well. I think that can be challenging. And that's why it's important to get in front of your own still life objects as much as you can. Use the photographic references that I have at the database and use these lessons as helper guides, and then break off and do you can do your own stuff when you need to, and then come back to it. But we can correct that. All right, so getting back now to our lay-in. So let's lay in. I'm going to lay in the cone first. The cone is kind of in the middle, so I'm just kind of lightly feel that through a little bit. So that cone is also overlapped a little bit from the pyramid, and I'll draw through that later. So I'm going to lay in the cone here, and I feel its top about right there. I'm going to cut off maybe some of this at the top too. So I'm going to put the cone and everything a little higher, and so we'll gingerly now lay in the angle of the cone here, and then come down and through here. So the cone will be there, and it's got a cast shadow moving a little bit this way. So where's the light source? Well, the light source is from the right, and it's about medium height, so it's about here looking in and over coming in. So you can see it's actually the direction of that cast shadow out and over somewhere out here. Keep that in mind. So we've got the cone that we've laid in, and I'll start to block in that cube in the background. That's a perfect cube here. So we're looking at that negative space there. So laying in the front plane here, and laying that downward, coming down to the middle plane, over through here, in through here. And I want to make sure I don't crop out that rectangular box in through there. Okay, so we see just a little top over here of our boxy form. Now I want to draw this little solid through, almost in through here, because it'll get cut off about right there. So about there, and then I'll come over so I can draw through a little bit. And so that back table would be just a little bit higher. So probably about right about there. Feels pretty good. Once I get a good line, I'll make it a little bit stronger. Now let's put that rectangular box. I'm going to make it pretty high up here and over, and I know it's going to touch and overlap our cube about right here. So I'll bring it up and a little bit higher there. I'm going to get close to that edge, and now I'm going to bring it over. Now I'm going to relate this angle that I talked about over and through here. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit further. That's an adjustment. I made that adjustment. You have artistic license. I'm not going to take extreme adjustments, but I need a little bit of adjustment to make that work a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to bring, so that's the side here, so I need to bring, this is actually about right here, sorry, so it's about right there, and over, and then we can come just slightly down, not by a whole lot, in through here, and then about right there to here for the side of the box. Let me tighten that up a little bit, so you can see this a little bit better coming in through here. So I made an adjustment there. Here, especially through here. Not so much there, but especially through here. And I'm actually going to make that angle just not quite even that strong. Just a little bit more than it is in the photograph, but barely. And I think I'm actually going to crop that off. I think that'll be nice to crop that. So I'm going to make another adjustment and crop that. This is almost straight, but not quite since it goes back. And just slightly angle it, so I changed the angle just a little bit. So, a couple things I did. I cropped it off in my photograph. I think this is good to see how artists make adjustments to what they want. Let me come over here and get this box tightened up. So once I get an edge, and I've got a machine edge that I'm working with, so a man-made edge, I'll sketch it in, and then I'll tighten it up really quickly with a hard edge, but keep it, still sketchy. We don't have to draw so tight and so rigid, even when we're using an edge. So about right there for that cube, and through there, and I'll pull this angle back a little bit further and through there, and then also now through to about right, back there, there's the 45, and then over, back on it through. So we're feeling pretty good there. That's a little bit too angled. Right in through there. So I'll make little mistakes and I'll adjust as you need to. So, wax pencil is a little bit tougher to erase. That's one thing that's a little bit of a negative, so I have to be careful. But it does come off a little bit. I don't mind showing a few mistakes. It gives the drawing a little bit of integrity. I guess a human touch quality to it. So it's a drawing, it's not a photograph. I'll do maybe something in the future. Don't hold me to it yet. I get some emails like, "Hey, you didn't do that?" I totally forgot I was going to do that. But I think that's good. What I'm saying is we might do something that's real photographically rendered, when we do rendering kinds of projects, that might help. But, you know, let drawings be drawings. So I made this higher than the cone right here, the rectangular box here, and I changed the angle a little bit, and I also cropped it just a touch. So you can alter that which you draw from according to your needs, and to, I think I made the, hopefully the final product better. Okay. All right, so a couple of interesting things. I'm playing around this cast shadow here now, coming from this pyramid later on, but it comes up this box right in through here. This is a form shadow from form shadow here, and then cast shadow from the pyramid later on, which will be about right, a little bit higher, and then kind of comes in and over. Have a nice subtlety to that. So we can kind of play around already with the angle of the cast shadow, which is almost really horizontal, coming through here, right? So we get that coming on through. And let's start to play now with the pyramid. So one thing I see how to place it, I'm kind of looking at this diagonal in terms of composition, where this point is of the cube. And see those, I'm looking at this diagonal, so about this angle where the end of the pyramid would be, over to about right here, how that plays off one another. That might be a little bit wider. It's kind of right in there to get that first angle. So I'll take a lighter stab at it, and then when I feel comfortable about it, I'll make it a little bit stronger. So that feels pretty good. Maybe a little bit longer on this side. So I'll put a little dot there to tell myself I'm getting confident how I want it. And then the backside shadow plane break of the pyramid is about right in through here. That's how I'm reading it. So this will be overlapped later on, and of course it'll be erased out because it'll be darker. And so now we have an opportunity to come over here, and let's see how we're doing right in through here, and then we'll bring the angle down of the pyramid. It's almost cropped out, not quite. We'll leave that on. That feels pretty good. Right in through there, and right in through there, and then we'll say okay. So this bottom part of this pyramid, it's a little blunt. It's kind of shaved off. I'll make it come to a point right now, and if I want to take it back to that little rectangular blunt ending, I will. So we have a little artistic license there. All right, so I've got my pyramid laid in, and I'll just match up, bring this cast shadow over, and you notice how there's part of that pyramid that's off, slightly off the table, which is kind of cool. That means it's probably a little bit crooked, and I'll just keep that for now. I'll change it if I want later. So I get that, so I'll get this cast shadow a little stronger in through here. You know, notice I'm drawing really lightly, fairly loosely. I could be looser, but pretty loose in the quality of the drawing. And now we have the cylinder and the ball still left to draw. So I may take on the sphere now and through here. It's a little bit taller than the pyramid, using a little horizontal alignment right through there. There's a lesson on that. And so a little bit higher that I've got I think it's in the basic section, and also the figure section, actually, that's right. And so the sphere probably sits about the same length, or horizontal length, of where the cylinder is. So it seems like a good place. And so I'm just thinking about that as I draw through. See how I draw through a little bit? Get in that habit. Get in that habit of feeling through objects and feeling through forms, so you can feel their backside as well. Because if I show you where this pyramid ends, about right here and over and through, that means they're almost touching, but not quite. Keep that in mind. Those subtleties of picking up full volume, being able to imagine forms as you draw them, as you see them, the front, the sides, but also what's going on the back, that which you can't see, right? All right, so we have the sphere laid in, and then I'm going to start in on the cylinder. The cylinder starts a little bit slightly to the left of that point, and I'll just draw the vertical up. It's classic one or 2 point cylinder. Now here's another issue. So again, the cylinder lays pretty stinking flat to our eye level. Now, because it's right at eye level, and because it's about almost really the same height as here, and here I'm telling my audience that this box is slightly above us because of the angle. When I change the angle here, Okay, I lowered our eye level just a little bit to get this angle. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So let's come back over and talk about this idea really quickly from here, right here. And so the difference is the cylinder is pretty straight across. I don't like that. That doesn't tell me a story about its roundness. So what I'm going to do, just like we did up here, I'm going to take it and I'm going to round it out just a little bit. Just enough of an angle to say our eye was here. We're going to drop our eye down about, I don't know, just a little bit so we're looking slightly up at these objects. Theoretically, that should change all of this, but it's so slight that it doesn't matter. Okay, as long as it's a very slight change. So if I can tighten this up a little bit to show you what I did, is I just made that more of a curve, whereas before, if you take a look at that, you see it pretty straight across. So it was like, it was like that, which I don't want. I want that to be a little bit more curved. All right, so what we can do is just draw a rectangular shape just to lay it in, and it's about the same height as this cone. I'm going to make it a little bit taller than the cone because I can, and a little bit shorter than this box because I can. I can do both of those. So we'll lay that in. It bisects the sphere about right in through there as I lay it in. Now I can come across and say it looks like a flat shape. Well, that's not good. What I need now is curvature. So I'm going to come across here and give this a little curve and drop our eye line just a little bit, or raise it higher. Either way, you can think of it. Otherwise, we are now looking up to it just a little bit. That's enough. Any more than that, and then we get into problems of perspective. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit, running through there. And now I'm going to lay in form shadows. So I lay the cast shadow in here. So now the cone is interesting because it's got two things going on. This makes this a more complex image, in that we've got a form shadow here coming across the object about halfway. It kind of bisects it. So we're turning here, right? The light source is coming in through here. But now we've got a cast shadow from the pyramid onto the cone here. So that means the light's pretty low. And so what's happening, this is a straight line angle, but now of a cast shadow, but it's on a curved surface. So it's going to go concave. Is it concave or convex? I think it's convex as it turns over through here. If I get that wrong, sorry, somebody correct me. It turns over. This is supposed to be a straight line cast shadow, but it's on a curved surface, so it's straight, and you can see where the bottom angle of it goes down a little bit like so. So you see how we have two different shadows, a form shadow, which what kind of edge does that have? It's going to be a soft edge later on. In a cast shadow, it's going to be a little bit harder. It's harder to tell the difference between, but I'm going to make this one a little softer, and I'm going to make that one a little sharper just to show the difference between the two. I think that's going to be pretty important. This angle of this pyramid, I'm going to make a little bit stronger, just slightly, about right here. Just a little bit more of an angle, whatever degree that is. Don't know. So I've made that change there, and so let's take a look now at our composition. And I think we're looking pretty good. We've got two form shadows to take care of, and then we finished our lay-in, and we can go to our block in. So lay-in takes care of composition, takes care of scale, proportion, any changes that you make, cropping, altering the viewpoint of the perspective slightly is important. So laying in now the form shadow over here, where the light ends and the shadow begins over here, right? And then we have our sphere, and I'm going to take some of this out so we can see that a little bit better. I don't mind some of these construction lines showing through my drawings. They're just demos, so it's not a big deal. If you don't like it, feel free to take them out. So form shadow here, the ball is in more shadow than it is light. Light source coming over here, hitting over here, and then we have this nice curvature of what will be where the light terminates, the shadow begins right in through there. And then I'll lay in also the cast shadow here in the back being made from the forms onto the wall. So it's a grayer wall, and now it's a little bit stronger, lower light. So we have this cast shadow here, and then it gets pushed off at a nice diagonal right over through there. That's going to be a nice area to work with. That helps break up some of that. And then I think what's important down here, see how this cast shadow line is pretty straight horizontal? Compositionally, that's a little rough. There's also, see where it gets a little bit lighter in value right in through here on the image, and then a little bit darker? It gives me a slight angle. I'm going to play off that angle a little bit more than it is, just to give movement. So I'm going to play this compositional movement game where I'm going to build up this angle here later so it can play off this, right, to this movement here. So, and then our eye sees this movement, this cast shadow comes up, helps me get over here. This angle, this, and over, and then we can come back through the curve and over to here, down, and then read out of the image. So diagonal movement and flow through the composition up and out is pretty important too as well. Okay, so there's the lay-in. Let's start now with the block-in, and let's separate this drawing in terms of its values from very simple 1-2 steps, light and dark. So when I start blocking in light, I block it in from about this round. I'm going to put a B over here, and that means that's where I block in about 3s or 4s maybe on the value scale. Remember, we're drawing with the light, not the dark. So as we get darker and as we get to the core shadow, that core shadow is going to be over here at 10. So the I'm going to be blocking in with what, probably 8s. Yeah, 9, 8, maybe 7s. So 8s and 7s over and through here. Okay, let's get to our block in. So I want to block in now the light on the still life. So 1-2 steps, separating the light side from the shadow side only. And we'll just begin here by taking each plane here. So I'm going to start with this plane and just lightly start to lay in a lighter value. Okay, so now we're blocking in, we're mopping in or blocking in, but we are taking it now from the light to the shadow. A little bit different process than before, but not dramatically so. I think that's important to notice too as well. This cast shadow line needs to be about right there. All right, so here, and then we'll start to hit this plane of our cube and through here a little bit at the top. But I'm going to go a little bit quicker for this one, a little faster sketch. So I got a question the other day about, well, not really a question, but a statement about the length of the videos. They can be long at times, and sometimes it's a little difficult. I would say watch them in sections. I would say also that they need to be as long as they need to be so you can see the process. I think that's important. Remember, you can always fast forward. So fast forward as much as you can. A lot of times it's just working on things you might have seen. So, but by all means do that. But by and large, what separates, I think, good instruction is seeing the entire process. So I really appreciated when I was a student seeing my professors show demos, and sometimes, since my classes were 8 hours long, we might have a 3-4 hour demo, and it was really illuminating. Just depends on your intensity, but you always have the option of pausing and moving on. I had a student the other day in my class here at the university. We're studying 2- and 3-point perspective, and I'm doing demonstrations in front of the class with everybody as they draw along, concept drawings, kind of like the videos. A lot like it, actually. And I was going pretty fast, and at the end of the class I had a student say, you know, Mark, it's like watching a YouTube video, but I can't pause you. And so I got a good chuckle out of that. And here you can pause the video, so please do when you can. But I'll keep them as long as they need to be. I don't want to make them any longer than that, but they'll need to be long, sometimes even longer. But feel free to certainly to pause it. You're in control of that. So, all right. So continuing to lay in form here, a lighter form, separating light side from dark side. I'm going to already go ahead and lay in a little value here, and you can already see we start to get a rudimentary. Kind of a darker roomed lit value structure and through here, so I'll lay this in, and I've kept this angle down below here to give us a little diagonal movement. I think that will help, and then we'll come up here and catch this pyramid over here. So yeah, I got a big chuckle out of that. My wife and I did both about you couldn't pause me in class. I thought that was funny. But here you can. That's why I think some instruction is better, especially in perspective. I think it's better done through 4K video now that we have 4K. It's really high def, and you can focus in and focus out, or you can edit in and out both and see clearly, and the student can pause and draw over. You know, it's like you have a mentor there at all times, and then after you do a drawing at the university, you can bring it back for critique and review, which is good. And then you don't always get that online, unfortunately, but it can't be everywhere. So now blocking in the light here, and I'm keeping it really simple. It's about I'm right over here in terms of value scale, nothing too dramatic. You can see this just start to illuminate and start to turn on a little bit. Okay, so it's about understanding 6 properties of light, value, edges, as well as doing it kind of in reverse, right? It is kind of in reverse when we do it this way. So blocking in the sphere here. There we go, getting the light shape. Continuing to work on the boundary, edges, as per needed and warranted. Right through here. There we go. Alright, it's looking pretty good for a start for a block in. Okay. Alright, so we've got a nice separation. I might come back here and get just a little subtlety right off the bat, right in through here. So I'm looking at this value over here, and they're pretty similar between here. Later on it'll be a little bit lighter in here. So we'll move up and around, keeping it pretty light, keeping it loose, looser this time. A little bit looser as we go through the process here. Okay, so it feels pretty good about where we're at in the drawing. So I'm going to continue on now. I'm going to start working with the cone and the box here, and go a little further now in my planes. I'm starting to develop with the box 1, 2, 3 step shading. So I'm going to kind of catch my edges a little bit here. Nice and clean, catch them through, refine them a little bit, then start to add a little bit more of the lighter value. I think one thing you want to be careful of in this particular type of drawing here is you don't want to get too light too quick. You know, most of everything is going to be in this area with the highest highlights about right in through there. So just be careful of that. Gradually ease into that. Try to see the subtleties within the forms. So it's lightest in this corner area, gets a little bit lighter than anything else, right in through here. So we can continue on. I'm just going to keep working it through here. And it gets a little bit softer and shadowy right in through here on the edge. right down in through here. A little cast shadow from that cone emerging, but it gets pretty modulated and soft. So I'm going to catch this edge a little bit here, running through there, and come back over. Catch this right there. It's looking pretty good, and we'll continue on through here. And downward, and then it gets a little bit lighter in this form shadow right into there. And it gets a little bit more of a kind of a, it's not, I wouldn't say highlight, but a little bit lighter in the lip towards that bottom. It's catching a little bit of light and through there. I'll come down a little bit and butt that out. It's getting reflected back up just a little bit, right in through there. And it's a little bit lighter up in through here. So remember, this image that we're working from is from the little tabletop that I have set up. It's got a piece of white foam core board, and so it's very white. But if you take a look at the actual image, what we're looking at, it's very much many different forms of cooler grays in this particular image. We've got one light source coming from the right, about medium height. So it's looking pretty good right in through there. I think that's plenty bright enough. It comes off in the camera even brighter than sometimes what I see in my image when I'm looking down on it a little bit. And so the last video I did, the tone paper, when I showed you my desk and how I work, so you can see kind of my setup. I think I'll do that more often, so you'll see the drawing in its original size. So you can get a better sense of that. So I'm going to come across this little form on the top plane, and it's close to where I want it to be right in through here. It's a little darker, okay? 1, 2, 3-step shading. Light source here, right? Hitting hottest and brightest, medium, and then darkest on the opposite. Since it's lower, this is going to be a little bit brighter. All right, so we're going to come through here. I'm going to catch this edge right in through here. There we go. That feels pretty good right in through there. So I'm going to point this out, tap this point a little bit in here, bring this corner together in the resolution just a little bit, and soften this little edge up just a little bit. And I think we're there. Maybe just a little bit more in through here, and blend this in just a little bit. That's pretty good. This secondary plane I'm going to leave for a moment, and I'll tell you why. I want to get a feel for this value on the rectangular box first, and then I'll get the subtleties of the cube next. So we're pretty. It seems like a flat value on this rectangular box, and it's a little bit not quite as hot or bright or contrasty as the lightest light on this one. And I'm going to put a little bit more light on the lip here, make it glow a little bit, bring that out just a little bit further. So we've got that. So I want to keep this tone down just a touch overall, more so than the brightest brights on that one. So that's kind of my goal here, is to do that. Come across here and modulate it inside here a little bit. So notice I take pains to catch my edges. Remember, I adjusted that edge just a little bit so we could see it more from a slightly lower eye level than what the image is, because it's straight across, which I did not care for. So we'll put that little lip on there and make it a little bit brighter, and then I'll carry that off there a little bit. So now I'm going to sand my tip a little bit, just rub that off screen a little bit to give it a little bit more back to a point a little bit. Okay, coming back. Right. Also, I'll try to do a better job of editing this time. Sometimes I missed the first cut edit on the last tone video. Sorry about that. You had to go see me find my chalk pencils, I had forgot to, where I put them. Didn't lay them out, so I'm glad I didn't say something stupid on camera. That would have been embarrassing. I have a tendency to say stupid things at times. But I thought I'd leave the edit in once I caught it. I won't. Oh well, nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not. So, all right. So I'm going to come down here and catch this little shadow now in through here by toning around it in light a little bit, and then glaze over that. See, I can kind of just glaze over that a little bit, and that gives me, that kind of softens it up a little bit, but also fades out its darker value a little bit. Tone that a little bit lighter, and I'll catch this over here so it's soft. Blend through that a little bit. Catch this light over here a little bit more. And we're pretty close, I think, to where I want it in through there. And we'll catch this edge right in through here. Okay. Now I can come back on this cube over and through the left side of the cubic box. I'll catch this edge just a little bit through here, and then I'll come back and say we're close in through here. I might glaze over it just a little bit to soften that up, especially right in through here, and then fade it off a little bit there. And we're pretty close to where I want it to be. I think I like having it there. Take that edge off. Okay, I think it's working pretty well. I'm going to lighten this up just a step more, not by much. I want this plane over here to modulate a little bit with some reflected movement, but not be as light as my lighter lights over and through here, and so I'll just lighten this up just a little bit more. Just perceptually minor, about right in through there. Okay, it's working pretty well. And then I'll come down and catch this this light, direct light coming in through here a little bit, and then on the table coming over, coming through right here. So it's a little bit faded from the plane of the box here, and then right in through this rectangular box is a little bit hotter, brighter. When I say hotter, sometimes I mean brighter. And right in through here, it's a little bit hotter because the light source is medium height coming from this direction, so it's hottest in here and a little bit perceptually less so as it comes down a little bit. Just try to be aware of that, be careful of that. So, all right, so taking this little cast shadow, and it's softer and modulated, muted there. Now I'll come across here, we'll work this rectangular plane. I'll take this line out. If you draw light enough with this colored pencils, you can erase them. If you get, excuse me, if you start getting pretty intense, you may have to take an electric eraser off to take off some of the work in through there. All right, so when looking at the relationship over here, this is pretty dark over here. It's pretty rich and dark. The only way I can get that true darkness is to leave the paper. So I might leave it pretty dark over here. I might just modulate a little bit. But here this plane is a little bit lighter from the rectangle, so I've got to go a touch or two lighter. Not by a whole lot. So its value scale relationship is way over in this range, really close to the dark. So I'm going to lay in a little bit here. I think I'll turn it to the side now, so I can see and get to it better, and you can see, I'll move the image obviously, as I've been doing. And so let's modulate it here a little bit, just a very, very light touch. And sometimes I like to work a little diagonally, just to give a planar approach, moving across the form in a diagonal manner, but it's very, 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 very light. And if I get a little too light, I take my kneaded eraser and I can dab it down a little bit and keep it darker than I need it. But I'm just relating this value, this whole area together. It's very, excuse me, very subtly different. Very much so. So it's a little bit lighter, a little bit more to the center. We get a little bit more reflected light, but not a whole lot. So it's looking pretty good in camera. And coming off, I'll get a little bit darker down into here. So again, I like to turn my images, if you're just seeing this for the first time, to the side or up and down, left or right, 360. You're in control of it all to get what you need, the best stroking methodology for your drawing. And this, again, this paper is not Canson. It's a little bit, it's got a slight tooth to it. It's good for concept drawing really quickly. It's not very expensive drawing. I forget exactly where and why I had it. I think somebody supplied it with me. It's kind of like just black construction paper, but I think it's a little bit better grade than that, but not by a whole lot. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. And through here, then I'm going to come across and bring up to that line a little bit. And through here. Notice I'm working in different directions. That helps to blend it if you want a little bit more blended look. We're keeping it, it's a fairly loose sketch. It's got some tightness to it. I've seen tighter, or excuse me, looser. I've done looser drawings, but it's somewhere in between that, which is fine. So a little bit lighter through here, not by much. Okay, so I'm going to flip back. Here we go. And back in camera there. Okay, so that's working, I think, pretty well. So this relationship, I think, works pretty well in terms of looking at the image. Now, we cropped off here compositionally, and so I'm going to work a little bit now this bottom shadow, and I'm going to take this harsher white line off because it doesn't really exist in the drawing, or the image, excuse me, and take that off a little bit. Now, these are perceptually really close values, aren't they? They're very, very close. And so to separate that out, there's a little bit lighter value at about right in through here, then it gets a little darker, so I'm going to lighten that lighter part right in through here. This is really, really subtle. These little steps, little thousands of little tiny value steps in through here. So right in through here, and then I'll come down a little bit, and it gets a little bit lighter where the edge ends right in through here, just a little bit. Little reflected light coming in through here perceptually to give me that line. And so I'm going to give a little bit of an edge, not to the box, but I'm going to butt my edge so I can bring up that lighter value, just that reflected light out just a little bit more with a crisper edge. That's what it's reading it. So it's kind of on the outside of that. That works decently well. And then it's going to fade down into that cast shadow. And the cast shadow gets further away from the pyramid. So notice how here it's a little stronger edged. And as it gradually gets further and further away, this is a good example of what happens when more light and reflected light gets to a cast shadow edge. It gets softer, softer and softer and more modulated. So that's important to see. Okay. That's about as light as I want to go there. There we go. So we can take that down now. Go a little darker by laying off through here. Come through. So now we've got our cast shadow over here, and it starts to get lighter on this side as more light gets through. So we'll start to lighten this up. Going to draw over this, and it just starts to soften it up too as well. You can see that it gives it a nice softness. So I've seen a lot of, when I worked in storyboarding a little bit, a lot of concept artists use tone paper. They do really quick studies with color, etc. In pastel or colored pencil to get cool light ranges or concept drawings for animated movies or stop motion animation, which is like Nightmare Before Christmas with the puppets, the Tim Burton movie. A lot of concept drawings use tone paper, so they want to get a nocturne going. Like if it's at night, which a lot of scenes were, they already have the night sky. They don't have to work as hard. They can whip those things out quickly in no time. And that's another good use of toned paper. So this angle is a little bit, I've got it downward trending. It's a little bit the opposite. So I'm going to bring it over just a little bit to be a little bit more accurate, about running through there. That means my cone needs to be, in my drawing, a little bit smaller. Yours can be, you probably got yours right. I didn't, I messed mine up, so that's cool. So running through there. So that's another reason to use toned, darker toned paper if you're wondering, if you cared. There we go. So I'll catch that edge a little bit there. Got a little spit on my paper. Never hurt anybody. Never going to catch this edge coming over. This gets lighter. All of that gets a little bit lighter and softer. So we're going to continue to work this area in through here. So I'm thinking about, here's what I'm thinking in my mind. Hopefully this helps. I'm thinking about light, the 6 properties of light, but then I start relating. I think about it like little circles. Like, think of it this way. Here's the cap to the lens of my camera. And every time I'm in an area that I'm really concentrating on, I'm like, well, inside that circle, what's the value contrast relationship? Okay, after I've got the light source and light going, what is the relationship to all those values? That's what I'm thinking too as well. Hopefully that helps, since this is about artists and thinking and drawing. Okay. Here, so we're going to lighten this up a little bit. Continue on. It's just a little bit lighter right through here. There we go. It works pretty well. And this seems to be now wanting to be a little bit lighter in value. Coming across that edge here. Catching that edge. So if you're painting, how do you do strong edges? Well, you paint a stroke against a stroke, and that edge boundary helps keeps a tight edge, but also straight edges, especially if you're using quicker drying media like acrylic or gouache, or to a degree watercolor. I get questions about color. We won't get into color in this channel for a good long while, and then I've talked to other colleagues about coming in, maybe doing painting demos in the distant future, but this will be around for as long as I'm at this university. This drawing database will be around for a long time, so we'll keep adding to that. Also, if you're watching this video, and I'll talk a little bit about other things in drawing just to help keep you awake. Each playlist, the basics, the figure, perspective, simple form, formal perspective. There'll be relaxed perspective coming up later on, which is also known as sketching, by the way. All of that, take that in chronological order. They're relatively made chronologically, and they're meant to be watched in chronological order. So if you're wondering about how do I go through this, it's just chronological. I think that will take care of, hopefully, everything that you need to know about that. So that's what's meant by the playlist, in my opinion. That's what I use it for. So let me catch this edge now, the shadow, right here to make it a little bit stronger. Just barely pushing down so we get that edge. There we go. I think that's working pretty well through there. So now let's catch over here. Let's soften now this cast shadow. So we're basically moving, we blocked everything in right now. I'm moving left, kind of left to right. Just because I'm right-handed, it's easier. And I keep my hand off the drawing as best I can. Okay, so I'm going to soften all this up a little bit. This needs to be lightened up a little because of the value range, and we're working a different technique here. This light gets stays a little bit longer down in through here. It's really fun. I think it's fun to use this technique, reverse. People don't see it as often or think about it as often. It's pretty fun. It really makes you think about light even further. There we go. Okay, and through here. And we're coming through, and it'll get a little bit darker as we come over to the in the cast shadow range and region and through here. Then we'll leave that for a moment, and this goes even a little bit lighter in value. Again, remember what's in your little circle of your little vision that you're looking into. Okay, there we go. So we'll catch that a little bit for now. So we'll go a little bit lighter, running down that diagonal. I made that more diagonal later on. So I'll take a little bit more artistic liberty with that edge, especially right here. I want that edge to be lighter, longer. So it's not necessarily now in the image, but I'm using it as a compositional device. And through here, this is going to be a little bit lighter than what it is now, but darker overall to move my eye in. So look, I can be really loose, even quicker with it. Keep it pretty loose, keep it light. Try to stay awake out there. Slap yourself in the face. No, don't do that. Okay. So it fades out in terms of value a little bit. So that's about as light as I want to go. And it fades out. That's probably a decent amount. And of course I could refine. You could refine this photographically. You know, I'm not a big fan of photorealism. I think it's okay. I think it's a place to study. And I did that when I was a kid. I was a teenager. It's kind of how I came to drawing a little bit. Then you get in formal study and you studied art history and you study the history of drawing and painting. And, you know, there's relatively little art photorealism. Of course, there's an art historical movement of photorealism. So that's something you should look into and find those artists who did that. The name of the New York-based artist, for whatever reason, escapes my mind for a moment. So next time I do a cut here, I'll go back and look that name up really quickly, and I'll mention his name if you like. Photorealism. But it gets a little stiff and it gets a little brittle without learning to loosen up a little and let the natural materials show a little bit. So, alright, so that's working pretty well. This could be a little bit lighter, just to pop that little ray of light through just a little bit more. There we go. It's working pretty well, which means I probably want to lighten this up. So it's all about fine tuning as well. If you notice that, I'll hit a spot and I'll go over to other areas and hit that spot back and readjust as per needed. There we go. So it's working pretty well. All right, so I'm going to come through here a little bit, continue to refine this a little bit. So I might leave this pretty loose, pretty sketchy. And this gets a little bit lighter in through here. All of these are really soft edges, by the way. So a lot of soft transitions, nothing hard edge until we get to the edge of this pyramidal boxy form. Okay, through there. Take that over. Okay. I'm going to come catch this edge right in through there. All right, so it's looking pretty good here. Keep on coming. I'm going to build up this diagonal, pushing it over a little bit. I think that's going to help. So I'm going to lighten this up a little bit so I can draw the viewer's eye, bring the viewer's eye in over here. So I'll lighten up just a little bit to bring them over. Here's a little bit even lighter here to do that. So I get them moving over a little bit, moving and grooving, so to speak. I'm just glazing over this to get this to stay light. It's a little bit lighter. It's kind of a little halo right in where my pencil is right now. And through here, I think that's working plenty well. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to come in on, let's see, how about the cone? and start that cone, we'll get the pyramid in a little bit. I'm gonna catch this edge of the cube a little bit here. There we go. Right through there. Okay, catch that. And then we'll start on this pyramid. I might catch its edge just a little bit right here for now, just to bring it back into a tighter points up at the top here, just barely pushing down. Okay, now I'm going to turn my paper to the side here so I can get to the cone a little bit easier. And we can start to lay in now this cone a little bit further. Okay. So light form shadow, the highest, brightest highlights right in through, kind of where I'm working now, lightening up a little bit, and then gradually moving to get a little bit darker on the edge of this, right in this back edge. That'll be just perceptually, barely, a little bit darker, so a little bit less pressure right in through there. A little bit hotter in through there. It's pretty close to some of the brighter planes over here. Just a little bit lighter. Notice I keep adjusting as per needed. Right in through there, right in through there. So a little bit brighter in through here up to the tip point. Catch that, bring that down. I'm going to come in and point that off just a touch. It's almost like its own little highlight. Right in through here. Catch that edge in through there. Alright, now I'm going to bring it back over. I want to catch now the core shadow, which is, as we're turning across the cone, right, we're moving, turning across the cone. Let me get that in camera. Turning across the cone here, right, we've got this core shadow and then reflected light. Now the core shadow is not absolute dark on the value scale, so we've got a little bit more light coming through there. It's a little bit softer, so it's probably in this range right over in through, move that over just a little bit for right over in this area. So we'll take that into consideration now. So what we can do is kind of gloss over this with the pencil here, and everything is going to get kind of gleamed over a little bit, if you will, in light, a little bit of lighter value, so we don't have to make that core shadow as dark. If you take a look at the shadow contrast relationship here, here, and then here, this is much lighter. So I'll continue to go down, or go up a step, thinking in terms of shadow, continuing through here, because we know that once I get the core shadow value about where I want it, and I'm looking at the relationship between the lighter form values on this side against what the core shadow will be right in through here, and it's getting close, then everything on the other side in reflected light will actually be even lighter then. So it's a real reversal of thinking in terms of the technique to get what we want out of the same look, roughly, as working from a lighter piece of paper. So it's working pretty well. Now I'm going to come back down here a little bit. Okay. Right in through there, and through there, and now I'm going to start hitting my reflected light. Right up and through here, all over. Down here it gets just a little bit perceptually darker. Just a little. Catch that curve through here. Okay. So the reflected light on this cone on the left side, which I'm rendering in with my core shadow, is still much darker than the direct light that's hitting it. I'm going to soften that up. So now I'll come over and say, okay, I want to make my direct light a little stronger. And if my coarse shadow was a little too light, I can take my kneaded eraser and dab at that and darken it down a little bit. Catch this edge. Continue to work on edge integrity. Keeping your edges, boundary edges especially, nice and crisp. Coming over here. So this coarse shadow with the cast shadow in it is a complex situation. It's a little bit darker right in through here. It's got a little bit of a curved sort of area coming through, like so. And we're starting to get that to pull across. Go a little bit lighter. Okay. So this cone over here is, I want to reconstitute its curve a little bit. There we go. Catch that up there, and then I can lighten it up right in through here. So it's got to go a little lighter. Yeah, we're coming up, it's working pretty good. A little lighter here on this side. And now a little lighter on the direct light side. Right in through here. Keep on softening. That transition, that coarse shadow has got to be a light transition, or a soft transition, soft edge, form shadow, soft edge. Now, I'd like to go a little bit darker in it, so I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and we're just going to say, okay, let's dab at this a little bit. Just press down a little and take off a little bit so we can darken up a little bit. Right in through here. And darken and soften a little bit. And then I can use the tools of my pencil to come back and redraw on top of it a little bit to soften back and light back up. So I'll take off a little bit more than I want just to get that close to that. It's pretty close. Then I can soften this up by just barely sort of glossing over it. Let me catch this up here. And then soften this over a little bit. So I'm just moving my pencil, laying it almost down flat and just kind of softening this. It's a little bit darker. I wanted to go a little bit darker, so I kept it darker. And softening those edges here. There we go. And this is going to go a little lighter in through here. There we go, working pretty well there. There's a little light mark. You can catch that right in through there as it turns a little bit. It's just a little bit lighter into here. Just lots of light changes. So values changing constantly to get light to reflect off each other. So it can't be the same value for too long. You're going to be switching and moving quite a bit with your values. So you've got a lot more than just the quantifiable value scale that we've talked about before. It's a lot deeper than that. But 10 is enough to get a good general idea of where we're at. Otherwise, it gets so complex. It's like having too many colors on a palette. You don't want, I wouldn't think you want too many. If you had like 150 colors on a palette, you'd go nuts. Absolutely you would. Okay, running through there. Alright, so a little stronger light over here and soft, and let's catch that edge, and I think we're getting Getting pretty good there with the cone. Catch that edge a little bit further. Feels pretty good. I might take my kneaded eraser right in this little core of the core, just perceptually, just a little bit darker. That felt pretty good there. Okay, so we're always in a state of refinement. Now I'm going to come back down out here on the edge of this cast shadow on the wall. It's so deep and dark, I kind of like it against a lot of this for now. I might change my mind, but I'm going to come over here and say, okay, we've got some little modular shifts going on in value here. Catch that edge a little bit. Make sure I'm nice in camera there. And let's say, okay, I'm through here, and we'll come over and start to blend this in. Laying a little value, a little lighter value, and we'll come over. And then we've got, this gets a little bit lighter. It's almost kind of like these little bars, but there's very soft little transitions. A little lighter in through here. Then it gets a little bit darker as we get closer. Right in through here, it gets closer to that cylinder, just barely running through here. And then it catches, see how it's a little bit of a crisper edge right in through there, but it's still softer. That's important to get. And it kind of fades out a little bit in through here. Then it has another little area. So that's just a little bit of a stronger edge. So that means it's a little bit stronger value, not by a whole lot. That feels like to be enough, I think, right in through there. So we're doing a good drawing, and then I'm going to let just a little atmosphere come down in through here. This is perceptually very slight. And just because absolute dark is a drawing killer, can suck out so much light. So I'm going to bring just a little bit of atmosphere into that, just barely. And I might even take some out with my kneaded eraser and modulate it just a little bit. So we're going to take that over just a touch. Even back in through here just a little bit. Just a little glazing over there. Just perceptually a little. Now what I'll do is I'll take my kneaded eraser and I'll say maybe, okay, this could be a little stronger dark right in through here, and I can take my edge, okay, run in through here, take that, use that as an edge, bring out a little dark there. I think that works pretty well. And then catch, maybe keep it a little bit darker. So I'll take, and this is very probably slight on the camera, just a little bit in through here, a little bit darker. Just touches. So just keep it a little bit more atmospheric. I think that's, for a sketch, I think that's fine. So let me catch this edge on the end of the cone over here, keep it crisp, and I think that'll help separate further and through. And I'm going to go a little bit brighter, just right in here on the cone, right there. And I think that'll get what I need from it right in through there. There we go. Okay, that sits down pretty well. This shadow could come out a little more now. Just a little bit more. I think we're going pretty well. So moving on here, we'll capture, finish this out a little bit. This gets softened in just a little. Edges, light value edges, and contrasts. Key to reading many different kinds of images and processes. Two-dimensional art, three-dimensional as well. It's not just for drawing and painting, but photography, visual communication design, or graphic design, if you will. This might soften right into there. Okay. Right, so I think that's working pretty well. So I'll go back and double check here. Might bring this down. So I go back to this cube a lot because it's important. It was the first one I did. And it's probably this cone and the cube are the focal point regions. The planes are the lightest. That's my thinking. And so they're going to be important to kind of finalize. Just working on these shadow shapes and within the planes, especially this little cast shadow over here. Just slightly add an edge and slightly soft, or softer than I had it as well. Okay, so now I'm going to come over. We'll start with this pyramid. And a couple things you notice, the lighting situation is not as dominant as here, so we'll keep it that way. But we do want to modulate our lighting situation, meaning that we're skipping light across it so it's not flat and not the same value all over. There's shifts all over, these minor shifts. So we want to stay from anything that's truly just flat, flat, flat. So we'll start to bring up this value up on this plane. So remember, this is within the plane, so the lighting on this are soft form shadow shifts. And of course there's a plane boundary, that's that hard boundary edge that you want. So you get control and degree of contrast there too as well. Okay. Right. So we're going to come up a little bit, and so I'm relating this, all of this little circle here to one another. And I might go just take that off just a little bit. Tweak there a little bit. There's a lot of tweaking that goes on. Right it through there. I'll catch this. Notice I'll come back and I'll catch my edge a little bit. So, and I'll butt my edge to keep that edge strong. You can do that in painting too. You can mask off with tape later on if you so wish. So lightest in that corner, and then starts to grade it out a little bit. It looks pretty good, and it gets a little bit perceptually. I'm going to let it go a little darker as it gets down the shaft, so we pay less attention to it over here and more attention to the front over here of the cone and the cube, which is our focal point area. Catch that a little bit, and then take the bite of that line off. It's a little softer. Here we go. Move that in camera. That's it. There we go. There we go. Take that edge through. Now, we're close there. I'm going to go one more pass lighter here, since I could get that to where I'm closer to where I want it here. There we go. And keep this edge clean and crisp. And I'm not pushing down. I'm just really kind of reaffirming it without really drawing too heavy or drawing too dark. Just want to be very careful with it. Right into there. It's going pretty well. Okay. That's about that's really close to where that value wants to be, or should be in relationship to the image actually. So we'll take that here. So it's a little bit lighter in that lip, and I'm going to fade off pretty quickly into here and here. But this needs to go all the way through the tip of the cone. Can go a little bit lighter actually. There we go. So I'll come over here. And yep, here in camera. Now I could fade it off a little bit darker than what's in the image, and I think I'll do that just for effect. Really make an issue running it off. That means I'm going to go a little bit darker and leave it about like that. That's a little bit darker of a fade than what's on camera, but maybe not too much. Maybe it's actually closer than what I think. So I'm going to catch this edge Just a little bit there to pop out a clean edge. And then I'm going to come over here now to the pyramid's dark plane. I'm going to take off the little line work in between. You should be able to see that in 4K. It's a sketch though. Some of the extra lines are fine. So this plane, relate this plane to this dark value. They're not the same. We're darker here, and we want to be darker overall than here. Actually relate these two together, here and here. These two planes, they're really the same, pretty close. It gets maybe a little bit lighter over here, but they're pretty close. So we want to really essentially have the same thing here as we do here with these two. So start relating ideas in your drawing back to one another. All right, so to do that, we sort of just simply glaze over, and I'm way over here with that value right in through there to here. So very lightly. And by the way, it's a pretty small drawing, 9 by 12, just for the sake of the camera. But these processes are the same no matter what size you use. Scale doesn't really change the elements and principles of concept. What does change is the physicality of what you do, by and large, by measurable exponents. The larger and bigger you draw, the more physical, boy, it starts to really get on you, especially if you're a little older. So, but that shouldn't stop you from working big. But just FYI on that. So I'm working this plane here. Working pretty well. And just glossing over here. So I'll keep it a little bit darker along the lip. And a little bit lighter in the middle. Just slightly perceptually. I want a nice gradual, graduated sort of look and feel to the light. We're getting the sensation of atmosphere and light. In order to do that, we've got to be soft when we need to have soft edges, hard when we need to have hard edges, and lots of subtle little transitions to make that work out for us better. I think that's working pretty well and through here. Okay, now it's looking pretty good. There's a little light that's skipping, coming back over that reflected little edge because that forms the molecules there a little, whatever reason, was a little bit more transparent along the tip of that edge. So I could show that. I don't know if it's a molecular thing. Don't want to do bad science there. Okay. There's already enough of that out in the real world. Good science. Here we go. Okay, so that's working pretty well, I think. Now I'm going to come over here and catch this edge here that's a little bit lighter. I think that works pretty well in through here. Just a lighter touch in through here. I think that's working pretty well. Come over here to the corner of the pyramidal tip, and it's kind of squared off a little bit, so it's a little bit lighter underneath here. Right in through there. And it gets lightest in this little plain edge at the tip here. We'll just catch that. Soften this a little bit and let that just fade over. And come up and through over here. And now we're working in this region of the drawing. Now take a look. If I'm taking my little circle where I'm looking at in terms of my value relationships, this space between here and the edge of the boundary, which were cropped, shortened a little bit in my drawing. It's pretty similar to the plane here, right? So it's pretty close. So the value difference between here and here are pretty close. Okay, just keep that in mind. So I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to add start adding a little value in the background tone here. Not a whole lot. And you can see we gradually go a little lighter in through here. Now I can push, either make this lighter or make this a little bit darker. I'm not sure which yet, just to play off a change, because they can't be the same value, because they're really not. They're close. That's why we can see them distinctively, but they're close. So we'll take this value here. We'll just run this in to gloss over all that in through here. There we go. And I think I'm going to leave the value outside of the pyramidal plane a little, just a slightly darker then. So I'll catch that edge, clean that up, and I'll leave this just a little bit darker. But notice how I run my pencil into everything. I'm just drawing so lightly that it's not going to matter. It has a way of giving it an atmospheric quality and resolution to it. A lot of people try to work the outside boundary so much and leave little halos around. You don't have to do that. So we're working in through here. Coming over here through here, taking great pains. So I think it's probably now it's time to add the light on that sphere. Because that light on that sphere is getting hit hotter closer to the farther right of the light edge there and through there. So it's probably time to hit it. And it's because it's lighter than either of these values next to it a little bit. So we can start to lay that in now. So we'll go a step further, how we blocked in. And then I'm going to keep on going another step and start to come over here and soften now the core shadow over and through here, especially right in through here as we start to work now the back side of the object, reflected light. So this object, the reason why this has a little halo here is the light source over here, it's hitting objects that light's bouncing back onto that reflected light. That reflected light's pretty strong, but notice it's not as strong as direct lighting. Direct lighting will always be the strongest unless you have multiple light sources on either side of an object, then that's not reflected light anymore. That's two direct light sources. So we're coming over into here. And I'm going to catch this edge of the sphere a little bit, catch that in through here. There we go. So it's starting to block in, starting to come up a little bit in terms of its resolution. And that core shadow is a darker core shadow. It might be the darkest core shadow of all the objects. Right in through, I'm talking about right in through here. So I might have to go back, probably go back and erase at that and take that out just a little bit further. So now I'm going to come to the sphere now and take another pass at it and go a little bit lighter and hotter right in through here. And just do this in waves. Coming through, catching the edge here. And this is slightly darker form shadow. And this is the highlight, or ones and twos, or at least properties of light, ones and twos. Light, almost a highlight. There's not a real glossy highlight, but this is the lightest part for sure. And then downward in here. Catch this edge one more time. Right through here. There we go. Just keep on working to modulate. Right in through here. So it's brightest a little bit in the middle of the sphere because of where the light source is located. Catch that. We'll clean up this edge in a moment. Of that sphere, it's working pretty well. So now I'll put in this reflected light halo that we see. So it's a little bit darker in this core shadow area, and then on this side it gets lighter. Then it's a little bit darker than the plane of this pyramid, so I may go one step lighter. See how I'm adjusting here? So let's lay that in. Okay, so now I've lost my core shadow a little bit, so I'll go back and catch that in a moment. To here, so that's pretty close. All right, so I'll come back and catch this a little bit. Then I'll take my kneaded eraser, and I'll dab off, and I'll take maybe just a pinch, about that big, really tiny, not a whole lot, and I can come over and start to dab that through a little bit. Start to take that out and reconstitute where that core shadow wants to be a little bit. Take great pains to keep it soft. It's working pretty well. And I can continue to blend some in through here. Continue to work it soft. Now we could spend more hours to get really rough, finite, but I won't. I'm gonna put everybody in a coma. There we go, through here. Okay. It's working pretty well in through there. So I'm gonna take out, come across over here, I'm going to take out this little lip. And I can recapture that. And still lighten it up when I have to go back and take off that a little bit. Let me straighten this back up. There we go. Okay. And catch this edge. Just reconstitute this edge a little bit against here, and come over here a little bit. There we go, because this cylinder shadow is going to be a little lighter against it, so I'm going to go ahead and do that and show you that. Right in through here. All this will just be a little bit lighter. It brings that ball to resolution here. We'll catch that in a moment. We go. So when I draw this edge, I've got to draw just a little bit on the outside, because I'm drawing actually the cylinder reflected light around it to make sure I've got the edge how I want it. Keep that in mind. That's important. So this looks pretty good. Just a little bit brighter here. They're so close together, the pyramid value and that reflected light. It's wonderful to see that, and this edge is just a little bit sharper, but it gives it kind of a glow right in through there. I think that's looking pretty decent in through here. So we'll capture this edge back in through here. Catch the edge of this ball a little bit. Try to keep my head out of the way. Go. It's working pretty well, I think. There we go. Now I can bring this back over. That edge is a little bit tighter now. Through here. And just a little bit lighter over here too as well. Okay. All right, I think we're working pretty well. I'm going to soften up this coarse shadow right in here just a little bit with just a little value, just to take off a little bit of the bite on it. But I think it's working pretty well in through there. And then if I feel like this was a little too light right in through here, I can just barely take off, dab at that, just a touch. I'm barely pushing down. I think that's plenty, especially for a little quick sketch, however long this takes. Okay, so I think that works pretty well. I'm going to come back and catch this edge again. Notice I say that a lot. I catch edges, catch your edge, catch your edge. Always reconstitute your edges. Make sure they're crisp where you need them and they're soft where you need them. You can't be overemphasized, really. Continue to tweak that. I think I'm ready to go on now to the cylinder, as we're getting close now to resolution. So we'll bring up the cylinder here. Now remember, I changed the angle of the cylinder a little bit from I changed our eye level of the cylinder and brought the curve, since it was a flat curve at eye level, which is really a little awkward when you have a straight line like that. You're used to a curve and you want to see a curve. Your audience wants to see a curve. And so we give them a curve, either underneath as we're looking above, or it was easier to curve that over and raise it up a little bit, which makes it better. So I'm going to add now the light over here against the cylinder and against a little bit of shadow of the sphere over here. We're just going to pop that core shadow out. That's why it was already pretty dark. That's why I actually softened it a little bit. So let's start to add that through. So we'll take it in layers. That's why it takes a little longer to make it work really well. Soften and blend a little bit. They'll come over. So we're going to work that edge right in through here. I'm going to turn this drawing now so I can get that edge of that ball a little bit through there. So now I'm drawing the outside edge of the ball. I'm really drawing light on the cylinder, but I need to get that edge crisp. It's important, or crisper just a little bit, to make that work. My head's not too much in the way. There we go. It's working decent. So keep it like that. I'll bring up this light. And make it hottest a little bit running through here where I've got it going on. And it fades a little bit as it gets to the core shadow and reflected light. That's working pretty well. Doesn't have a distinct highlight, so we're going to catch that edge in through here. And I made my cylinder a little wider than looks like what the image is too, a little bit. It's okay. Catch that edge a little bit, make it crisp so it reads sharply against the backside boundary, backside backdrop, if you will. Alright, so we've got that. Okay. So I'm going to come back over, reposition the drawing. Here we go. Okay, so we're looking pretty good there. Now we've got some refinement to do in the core shadow and reflected light, really all over in every region of the cylinder here. Okay, all right, so overall the shadow is it's close to where it needs to be. So I'm actually gonna take and maybe just slightly darken in the core shadow of it, and then also right the core of the sphere right in through there. Make that pop out a little bit further. So we'll take this down a little bit. I'll kind of just drag it since it's wax. It doesn't really smear. I'll just drag it through and darken that darker than it needs to be so I can manipulate that again. I can soften that. So it's a little bit darker than it is now or in the image. And we can start to soften this a little bit. Soften those edges and then also reduce the contrast both at the same time. So I'll come across the form like so to do that. Do there. This is looking pretty good. And then I'm going to start to lighten up over here because of that reflected light now. So we can bring out that core shadow a little further without having to draw it too dark or make it any darker. You can actually make it darker by drawing the reflected light. And through here works pretty well. So I think we're getting close there to what I want out of the cylinder. So I'll take now and find this edge, reconstitute the back edge a little bit. Bring that value up against that edge, abut that edge, strengthen up that edge. There we go. Through there. A little bit lighter, just a touch, but soft. Soft transition. I think we're going to be pretty close there. So I'm going to come back now and catch this edge up here of the cylinder a little bit. Make it nice and tight. Tight against that backdrop a little bit. So I might come along and take the eraser here and work against that just a little bit, even though I'll take out, make it dark, the background darker, but I can soften it up just a little bit. Reconstitute, get that edge, recapture that edge, turn that curve a little bit where I wanted it, strengthen an edge, and then I can come back and say, okay, this background can go a little softer and a little lighter, both right in through here, but not by a whole lot, but right through there. And then up here, just a little bit, just barely. And then we've got a little bit of play going on here. Take this edge, I want to make this crisper. I might take my white eraser. Here's something I'll show you. This edge is pretty blunt. So I'm going to take my knife here and I'm going to cut this edge out just a little bit. Okay. And I made a nice sharp edge with a little cutout. And I'm going to come across here and erase really tightly that edge. I wanted a sharper edge there and I got it. Can't always get your kneaded eraser. The Japanese mono erasers are great. I left them at my home studio. I didn't bring them. The absent-minded professor. That's what my wife calls me, the absent-minded professor. That's not very nice of her, but she's right. You get the idea. Is you just want that hard edge, a little bit harder edge. I want to make this a little bit lighter. And I want to come across and catch this edge. I'm drawing the shadow. I'm not drawing the core shadow of the ball. I'm drawing outside of it just a little bit. And I'm bringing it up against that edge to make it nice and tight. That's important. Right in there is important. Really important to get to come together. There we go. That works pretty well. Not bad. Now I'm going to draw inside the sphere here to get that edge, crisp edge here and there a little bit. That works pretty well. So this background can go a little lighter in through here. It's working pretty well. It's all about edges and contrasts and light and value. Okay. Getting pretty close there. Tweak this out. Make this lip a little stronger. Catch a little light there on the lip of an object, just a touch. I'll bring that out. And I'm going to take, to alter this a little bit, I'm going to take this plane. I'm going to make a real flat little dabbing device. I'm going to take this, all of it down, just a touch. It's a little light. I can show you that. Take this down by dabbing into it, and I can soften it back up because I've taken out. I can see where I can take it a little bit too much. So I want the sphere to pop out a little bit more than the cylinder. Okay, so I've got that. It's perceptually very minor. I get it. What we're going to do there. Tighten it in. I think we're looking pretty good. They're pretty tight. Okay. So now let's tweak this out a little bit, tighten this up in tiny little areas, and I'll try to finish that out in less than 5 minutes. Okay, let's do that now. Okay, tweaking tools. Let's talk about maybe adding a little bit of dimension to the drawing in terms of what we can use to clear up and clean up our edges when we need to, a little finite tool. So here I've got in front of me the little rotating electric eraser. You can kind of hear it move. You just push the button. It's battery powered and it erases away really nicely. Okay, and then we have the Japanese mono erasers, which are great to use here. They come in different tips, you can see right here and also here for erasing, and actually a little bit of a charcoal pencil. I'll show you that in a second. So looking at my image, I might do well to have a few little areas of hard edges. And I just got out of class teaching and I left my other tools in there, so I'll just use these. I can't get it all together. So I'm just going to put a little line there, a little cleaner line there, but I'm going to just erase it out, which I did there. Let's see, where else can I have a little cleaner line that I want? Use a little dark value, so maybe right just in here. I'm going to clean up that edge. Here, a little tweaking edge. It's very perceptibly slight. Just a cleaning little edge to clean off that. Maybe I'll come around here on this edge. I'm using the Japanese mono eraser. They're wonderful to use. Little tiny little Little hard erasers, they're wonderful to have. Clean up that little edge there. It's kind of nice. Maybe in this coarse shadow, right in through here, I want it to be a little bit darker, so I can take my other mono eraser, go right in through here just a touch, bring that out a little bit further, right through there. Now it's wax pencil, so it doesn't erase easily, which is kind of nice. You kind of have to work at it a little bit further. And then I'm going to take and clean up this edge in through here a little bit of this ball. Sometimes it can be tricky when you're working with spherical objects to, especially when they're round, you've got all these edges to come back and keep it round. You kind of have to work hard at it. That's why drawing ellipses and drawing circles, practicing those can be very important. So this could be a little lighter, right in through here, just barely. Keep that lighter on there. Put a little bit of lighter touch on that. And I might take off a little bit of this lip right in through here. So really working to clean out that edge best I can. And if it gets too strong with the line kind of quality, I can come back and soften that up a little bit with a little bit more light. So it actually is a little bit lighter, about right in through here. Right in through there. So I can lighten that up a bit. And maybe back right in through here. A little lighter, hard-edged. So I left my triangles in the studio classroom, so I got to go back in, teach another class. But I thought I would finish this little section of this video, just kind of a tweaking section there, like that. And then maybe I want an edge down here, a little stronger on the pyramid box, right in through here. So I can take one of my monos and just take a tight little edge and do it against this a little bit to clean up those edges. It's very, very slight, perceptually just really slight. I can clean this edge up if it gets a little blurry. That's the blunt one, and I can take the really, really thin one. Those are nice to have. These are great to have. Really strong little erasers. And through there. Then, you know, the electric eraser, let me use that for a second. Let's say I want to take off this little lip. That's a nice little gadget. In the US, they're about $30 or $40. Now, I've got some heavy-duty architectural ones that are in the hundreds of dollars, and boy, are they great. They're in my home studio. They're pretty expensive. So I might take this edge off here, this extra material. Kind of digging through there. You can see it kind of dig. Here it kind of dig. It's kind of nice. That cleans that up a little bit. So we can continue to clean and clean and clean the drawings up even further. So if I want a little edge here at the bottom, a little better edge, you can catch that. And if I want to take this white line out, make a darker line actually, you can do that. And then lastly, you can take your charcoal pencil. Okay, just be careful, don't overdraw with it. Just now you're dark on dark, right? But you can perceptually have a little dark line if you want there. You can see that. And right in this little edge, I'll kind of point out, just put a little tipping point there. That's kind of a nice little edge too, as well. Keep that very minimal, very soft. I don't use a whole lot. Matter of fact, I rarely use it at all, but sometimes it's kind of nice. I'll put a little crispy edge here, there, and then come back and catch this on the back. Line that up, catch that edge a little bit into there, and then maybe I'll take this back edge off with that light. So, tweaking tools to make your drawing even clearer and edgier and stronger when you need them to be. Okay. So I think that takes care of it. There we go. So now we worked on the darker toned paper, which gives you a nice sense, I think, of kind of a nocturnal value, or starting from a darker place and going to adding your lighter values. But we still separated our drawing into light and dark shadow pattern, right? And then we built up our values through the light, and then we built up our core shadows to help illuminate the turn of the objects, right, of course, and then also that helps with reflected light. And we're putting together properties of light, value, our value scale range over here. We changed our perspective a little bit when we needed that, or when I needed that. And we also demonstrated kind of refinement with the piece of paper, and then of course now we're just tweaking a little bit and changing it up. So I'm just giving it a little line in through there. Barely pushed down the charcoal at all. And I think that's plenty good. Maybe run in through here. Might look pretty good. In through there. Okay, there you go. I hope you liked it. So we'll keep going with the basic section and toned papers and other materials, and pen and ink, some fountain pens, etc. And we'll keep going, and we'll continue to get a little bit more complex as we go along. So keep watching, stay tuned, and we will present our next drawing problem to solve. Okay, there you go. Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.